Does everybody have papers for this evening? Okay. If you need a paper from last week and the week before, we were still on the introduction. We still were doing Revelation chapter 1, but we've moved on this evening to Revelation chapter 2. You know, Mark Lowry used to always say, he used to sing with the Gaither Vocal Band, and a lady came up to him one night after one of his performances, and she goes, well, I sure hope to see you in heaven. He goes, well, it's up to you because I'm going. He goes, you don't have a choice. I'm going. So, does anybody have any questions over what we did last week? Or over chapter 1 in general?
Yeah, I just want to recap. Maybe I missed it.
Mm-hmm.
What was the time frame that John went to the island?
The time frame, let's see here. It was written around 95 to 96 A.D. Dominican was in charge at that time. He was in rule. And because John was preaching the gospel so powerfully, this is where he sent John to. You had asked the question, Alice, about how old John was. It is, from what I found, the only source that stated this was that John was over the age of 90, which would make him the oldest living disciple still at work. Whether or not that is completely accurate, I don't know. But that is the information that I found, was that John was probably around 90 to 95 years old. And there were no other disciples that lived that long. Mm-hmm. Anybody else? Pastor Brian and a couple other ones had asked a question about the number 7. Why is 7 a perfect number? 7 is a perfect number, not only to the Jews, but to every race or group of people, especially when it comes to Scripture. The reason being, how many days did God create the world in? 7. What did He do on the 7th day? Rested. 7 is the number of completion. It is the number of perfection. On the 7th day, God rested because what He had created was perfect. It was good. All right, I got the thumbs up on that one. We're good to go. Anything else?
We were reading in Proverbs last night, and they talked about a lady with 7 pillars. But I was looking, and it doesn't say anything about 7 pillars from what your paper said.
Right.
Are you familiar with anything on 7 pillars?
The 7 pillars were... I'd have to look at the passage to remember it. What chapter do you remember? Chapter 9? Okay. I will look at that and get back to you. You got 3 handouts this evening. Before we get to that, any other questions? I'm trying to answer them the best that I can as I get them, and if I don't have the answer, I do my best to go home and find the answer. Okay. The 3 handouts I gave you, one was obviously for chapter 2. The other one that I gave you, you're going to get later on, but because we continue to mention the word or the number 7, I just felt I should go ahead and give it to you. That way you can see how important it actually is. It's actually page 45 of your notes, and you aren't actually supposed to get it till chapter 6, but I'm a nice person. And you see how many number 7s there are. There are 7 visions. There are 7 seals, the 7 trumpets. There are the 7 last plagues, which are the 7 bowls. Then you have 7 churches, 7 spirits, candlesticks, stars, lamps, seals, horns, eyes, angels, trumpets, thunders, thousands, heads, crowns, angels, plagues, bowls, mountains, kings, beatitudes, and 7 I ams of Christ. Do you see how perfect the book of Revelation is? It contains, 7's mentioned Adam up there. It's just outstanding how many times the number 7 is used. And the only way that I can wrap my mind around this, and that other theologians and commentators have said, is that the book of Revelation, even though it talks about the judgment, it talks about the rapture for a little bit, but after that it talks about Christ coming back and ruling and reigning. It talks about the Great Tribulation, the years that will be absolutely miserable if you're left here on the earth. It's just going to be perfect. It is going to be the perfect judgment for everybody that has denied Christ. And that's why everything is done in sevens. So the I know thy works. Yeah, for each one of the churches, he says, I know thy works. Yeah. That would be one you would want to add to that list. Thank you for pointing that out, Bonnie. Yeah, write that up there. I know thy works. He says that to each and every single one of the churches. And he says it once or twice to each one. He says, I know thy works. I know what you're doing. I know what you're not doing. And we're going to talk about that this evening. We're going to start with Ephesus. The other handout that you got, you remember how I kept saying that the seven churches represented the seven church ages? And there was a little bit of question about what are the seven church ages. Now, I know this paper is hard to see. It's even hard for me to see. But it's the best one I could get, and I didn't have time to retype it to make it larger. And the copier over here, I couldn't figure out how to get it to zoom in the appropriate way, because when I did blow it up, it only got half of it. So I'm copier deficient. But this breaks up the seven church ages. When did the church start? At Pentecost. That was the first church age. That's when it started. And that, according to this chart, it began at 33 AD and went to 100 AD, which was 67 years. It was the apostolic church age. And this was the period that the apostles were alive, beginning with the day of Pentecost and ending with the death of the apostle John near the end of the first century. John on the Isle of Patmos. And it represents the church of Ephesus. And then you can go on down through there, and we'll refer back to this chart so that we can see how it correlates with each one of the churches that we go through. And if you will turn in your handout, the one dealing with chapter 2, it's page 17. It's the very last page. There's a chart there. It says the seven churches of Revelation. Does everybody have it? Okay, I see everybody kind of turning to it, so I'm just assuming. I gave you the first four churches, because those are the four that we deal with in chapter 2. The first one, Ephesus. What's it mean? Desirable. The character that they had was faith and patience, doctrinal truth. But you have strayed from your love of Christ. And if they will return, I will let you eat of the tree of life. Smyrna. What's it mean? Myrrh. Their character, martyrdom, persecution. They were martyred for their faith. Their only rebuke is that you have no fear in the midst of tribulation. Be faithful. And he says, I promise you, I will give you a crown of life. Pergamos, it means height and elevation of power. The character, worldly alliance, great and external growth. You're holding to false doctrines. Boy, doesn't that describe a lot of churches today? You're holding to false doctrines. But if you turn away, he says, I'll give you hidden manna and a white stone with a new name. Then we get to Thyatira. It means a sweet smell, sacrifice of labor. False teachers and doctrinal corruption. You have some committing fornications. You who are faithful, hold fast till I come. And he promises that I will give you power over the nations and the morning star. So that's what we're going to be dealing with in chapter 2. Whether or not we get through it all